Joe Biden turned some heads, got a lot of reaction earlier this week when he promised not to send Israel more weapons should they invade Rafah on the ground. To refresh your memory a bit, here's that video.
Made it clear that if they go into Rafah, they haven't gone into Rafah yet. If they go into Rafah, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah, to deal with the cities, to deal with that problem. We're going to continue to make sure Israel is secure in terms of Iron Dome and their ability to respond to attacks like came out of the Middle East recently. But it's just wrong. We're not going to supply the weapons and the artillery shells used that have been used.
Artillery shells as well.
Yeah, artillery shells.
Okay, now, of course, Israel already has enough weapons to invade Rafah. They don't need any more weapons. As of now, 300,000 people have evacuated Rafah. There are widening evacuation orders as the ground invasion is underway / imminent. I mean, they're already inching in. They already seized the border and then let it go. And it seems like they're already moving on the ground in Rafah. But things are going to get much worse. And so the evacuation orders are getting more widespread and more severe. And Biden says, well, if they do this, I'm going to cut off weapons. Of course, the joke's on us because they already have enough weapons to do what they have to do. But just to show you how under Israel's thumb our government is, from left to right, we're going to see some of the backlash from this statement. So here's Josh Gottheimer, New Jersey Democrat from the 5th District of the state. Gottheimer and Golden lead 26 Democratic members of Congress urging NSA Jake Sullivan to deliver security aid to Democratic ally Israel. Dear Mr. Sullivan, we are deeply concerned about the message the administration is sending to Hamas and other Iranian-backed terrorist proxies by withholding weapons shipments to Israel during a critical moment in the negotiations. Goes on, showing the whole letter here, but it goes on to here say, with democracy under assault around the world, we cannot undermine our ally Israel, especially in her greatest hour of need. America's commitments must always be ironclad, meaning unconditional, apparently. We have a duty to continue to equip Israel with the resources she needs to defend herself and crush the terrorists who also seek to do America harm, free the hostages, including the Americans, continue delivering critical humanitarian aid to the innocent civilians in Gaza, and to stand by our democratic allies around the world. Now, the signatories on this letter, 26 Democrats, Gottheimer, Golden, as you could see, our friend Richie Torres, soon to be former congressman, we hope, knock on wood. And of course, who at the end of the list there, Russell?
Debbie Wasserman Schmuck.
That's right. Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So, Debbie Wasserman Schmuck, pardon me. So, there's some Democratic opposition, 26 Democrats. On the donor side, Haim Saban, great name for someone to take exception with a pause in weapons to Israel. Let's kill more Palestinians, signed Haim.
I think it's Saban.
Yeah.
I think it's
Saban. I thought it was, okay, Saban.
I could be wrong. I think it's Saban.
Haim Saban.
He's a very big man in Hollywood, that guy. When I
with
went
a name
to,
like that, how can't you be?
Yes. I mean, it's just
You're
kind
not
of
going to be a cab driver with a name like that.
You just show up with that name. They put you in charge of a studio.
They're like, yeah, okay. We're going to start you on the Jurassic Park 4 rewrite tomorrow. That's it. No resume required.
Yeah, if you remember, I went to the Academy Award Museum, which is very fucking weird, man, because it's Hollywood. You would think it would have an amazing motion picture museum, and they don't. And the reason might be that museum is funded by this guy.
Maybe. Because this guy, as you can see, is a total moron. He writes like a second grader, and that's not an exaggeration. So Deadline reports media mogul Haim Saban, or what did you say, Saban?
Saban.
Haim Saban sent an email to top White House aides criticizing President Joe Biden's threat to withhold arms shipments to support an Israeli military invasion of Rafah. In the email, reported by Axios and Israeli media outlets, Saban, a longtime major Democratic donor, called Biden's threat a bad decision on all levels. Who is famous for writing like that? Well, there's a guy kind of on the shit list of a lot of Democrats. Very bad thing. It's a very bad decision on all levels. I don't know. It'll come to me.
A lot of smart people are saying this is a very bad decision.
A lot of smart people are saying this is a very bad thing to do. It's very unfair. Who talks? His name is not coming to me. It'll come to me at some point. The email was addressed to Steve Ricchetti and Anita Dunn, two of the president's top aides. So here's the tweet featuring this letter. This is how money and power corrupts a person to the point where you can write presidential aides a letter as if it were written by a second grader. This is his email. Hi, Steve and Anita. Can you it doesn't even bother to write words. It's like just shorthand. Let me fire off an email to the president protesting this latest policy move. I'm not going to even do the president of the United States the courtesy of spelling out all the words, right? Can you PLS,
where the fuck do you get the balls?
Exactly. Please share with the president. Dear President Biden, we, the U.S., as you stated numerous times, believe that Hamas should be defeated. We, the U.S., in this case, you, capital letters, Mr. President, space, comma, no space. Again, just like no proofreading, no nothing. Like a second grader type this. Have decided to stop sending munitions to Israel to achieve the goal that we/you have set up for Israel and ourselves. Even beyond Israel, this sends a terrible message to our allies in the region. And beyond that, we can flip from doing the right thing to bending to political pressure. Again, what kind of sentence is that? Let's not forget that there are more Jewish voters who care about Israel than Muslim voters that care about Hamas. Ooh, that's not a bigoted thing to say at all. That's not a bigoted thing to say at all. Bad decision on all levels. PLS, reconsider. Thank you, with respect. Heim, with respect. With respect. If you had respect, you'd bother to proofread the goddamn letter, maybe spell out the words. Notice
this guy's a fucking billionaire. You don't have 6 secretaries tailing you at all time.
If you look closely, the ... is a comma. He doesn't even use periods. He uses commas for the ellipses. Bad. So that's the level of respect that he has. Okay, so folks, I have a little theory that I'm fleshing out here. Okay, and we're going to get to the rest of this in a second. Okay, so what's the difference between Democrats and Republicans, right? It's a question that we've been asking ourselves for many, many years. Can't quite put our finger on it. They seem all too similar in all too many ways, but they are kind of different in the way they go about things. So I've come up with a theory. Okay, the Democrats are satanic, and the Republicans are demonic. The Republicans are unconscious servants of evil. They just reflexively do the most evil thing they could possibly think of because that is what they intrinsically are. The Democrats have an agency about them. They can think of the difference between good and evil and choose to do evil in the most Machiavellian and cruelest of ways. So, Joe Biden says, the Satanist, as the demons say, they both have the same goal in mind. Okay, we have to help Israel clear out the Gaza Strip. That's the goal they both share. However, they're competing for power. There's a campaign coming up, and they are competing against each other. So what the cold, calculating, mastermind evil geniuses in the Democratic Party figure is, we'll fund Israel for 6 months nonstop, and then at the last second, we'll say, our red line is Rafah, and if you go there, we're stopping weapons, knowing that they already have the weapons they need to go into Rafah and do what they have to do. The added benefit of this is they know that by doing that, they will bait the demonic Republicans into taking the even more extreme point of view. How dare you pause weapons? You know, that's how you can just count on them to react to every situation, and works like a charm. Exhibit A, here's Ted Cruz.
The Biden White House has been the most anti-Israel administration this nation has ever seen. Literally from day one, the Biden White House has been undermining Israel at every step of the way.
There's Exhibit A, Ted Cruz. Here's what Tom Cotton has to say.
Israel is fighting a just and necessary war. Their knees are not trembling. As Prime Minister Netanyahu just said, they'll fight alone if they have to. But let me assure all the Israelis watching, you won't have to fight alone. You don't have a problem with America. You have a problem with Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer and the Democratic Party.
That's Tom Cotton, the Patrick Bateman of Little Rock, Arkansas, everybody. What a maniac. What an absolute maniac. And here's Lindsey Graham using apocalyptic language here. Lindsey Graham on Meet the Press. When we were faced with the destruction as a nation after Pearl Harbor, we decided to end the war by bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
When we were faced with destruction as a nation after Pearl Harbor, fighting the Germans and the Japanese, we decided to end the war by bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki with nuclear weapons. That was the right decision. Give Israel the bombs they need to end the war they can't afford to lose, and work with them to minimize casualties.
Senator, military officials would argue that there has been so much technology since those bombs were dropped that for that very reason, that is why Israel and other developed countries can be more precise. But let me ask.
Okay. He's not buying that. And perhaps most ludicrously of all, breaking, Representative Corey Mills has just officially filed to impeach Joe Biden over this leveraging of aid, which is not real leveraging of aid because they already have all the weapons they need to complete the mission. But just the symbolic half a middle finger in the air to Israel gets this reaction from some Democrats, some high-profile donors, and some Republicans. In fact, most Republicans have their hair on fire over this. Fox Business reports House GOP drafting Biden impeachment articles over Israel aid cut-off threat. Representative Corey Mills from Florida is preparing an impeachment articles against President Biden over his threat to halt U.S. offensive aid to Israel, the first-term lawmaker told Fox News Digital on Thursday. Mills accused Biden of forcing Israel into a quid pro quo situation by leveraging U.S. dollars against the Israeli government's actions in Gaza, drawing parallels to Democrats' first impeachment of former President Trump over his handling of Ukraine aid. The House has no choice but to impeach President Quid Pro Joe Biden. As vice president, Biden was caught threatening to withhold funding and aid to Ukraine unless they fired the attorney general investigating Burisma, a company financially benefiting his son Hunter, not to mention the 10% share for the big guy himself, Mills said in a statement. Now Joe Biden is pressuring Israel, our biggest ally in the Middle East, by pausing their funding that has already been approved in the House if they don't stop all operations with Hamas. It's a very clear message, this for that. These are the same accusations made against President Trump, which resulted in his impeachment by Democrats. The same must happen for Joe Biden, which is why we're drawing up articles of impeachment now. Mills finished. Now, I don't approve of what Joe Biden did as vice president. I thought the impeachment against Donald Trump was bullshit, and I think this comparison is also bullshit. That just goes to show you how crazy the Republicans are, that they get baited into this extreme stance. I believe this is part of why this was part of the Democrats' plan ever since the Israel war went south, ever since it became a PR nightmare for them. I thought, okay, we're going to say this is our red line. We'll give them all these weapons. Then we'll cut them off, knowing they still have enough weapons they need. And by cutting them off, we'll make the Republicans look like the greater evil on this issue because they will take the bait like the demonic freaks that they are and react hysterically to this symbolic threat. That's my theory.
I don't think so. I think they're reacting to events as they develop on the ground. I don't think they ever expected the level of backlash that they're getting because they never did before.
Well,
Israel
always got
a
couple
pass
months ago.
before.
They knew that this was going to happen. They knew this was a problem a couple months ago.
But
they were preparing for it.
Right, and as things have evolved, now they're trying to find a way to save face. As you point out, they know that in the end, Israel already has the weapons it needs.
Right.
They're just looking for a fig leaf in order to claim that they put their foot down with Israel. I was reading an article the other day, actually, by a Zionist who was saying that Joe Biden was the most pro-Israel president ever, and he rattled off presidents who shut down Israel when they tried to go on these kinds of genocidal campaigns in the past. It named Johnson, Reagan, talked about how Israel was allowed to wage war for a couple of months and then America would tell them to shut it down. So I saved it. I have to look more into the details of what he was saying. But obviously the idea that Joe Biden has not supported Israel enough in its genocide is absurd. I think they're between a rock and a hard place, though. I don't think it's as 4D chess as that. You know what? Let's bait the Republicans into overreacting. What's that going to cost the Republicans?
No, it has the benefit
It's not
of
going to
that.
cost anything from their base. Their base isn't going to turn on them over that.
No, but if you can, and I don't know how much of that was calculated in advance. Definitely the red line bait and switch, that was calculated in advance. Okay, we have to set a red line, but we have to make sure the red line is not a real red line. So we're going to say 2 months in advance, this is our red line. We're going to give them weapons, and then at the last minute, we're going to pull weapons after they already have enough. I'm saying that comes with the added benefit of baiting the Republicans into appearing like the greater evil.
I'm saying that doesn't really do anything for them one way or the other.
It does,
so I don't
because
really think
it does because they have a problem. Their base is abandoning them over this Israel-Gaza war. I'm talking about the Democratic base.
Yeah,
so
but they're
if
not,
the Republicans
they're not going
look
to the
psychotically
Republicans.
evil, no, but
they're just going to write in uncommitted. They're
what
going to
I'm
vote for
saying
Jill
is,
Stein.
what I'm saying is, if you can make the Republicans look like the greater evil by baiting them into a psychotic response, then a lot of people who might be abandoning Biden think, well, we weren't going to vote for Biden because we were pissed off over the Israel war, but look at how extreme they are. They don't want to pause any weapons, so I guess we're going to have to fall in line. I think it comes with that political benefit.
I'm going to Occam's razor this. That's a lot of assumptions. The idea.
What I'm saying is, but I'm not saying that was part of the plan from day one. I'm saying this way they handled this quote unquote red line, which was bullshit, comes with the added benefit because the Republicans are so crazy of making the Democrats look like the lesser evil on the issue, even though they are not.
Yeah, I think they got swept up by circumstances, and they're being led by a guy who, is like 5 months away from an all-pudding diet, and he's behaving in a very reactive way. Now, when they see the Republicans behaving this way, do they feel like maybe it's to their benefit? I don't know, man. Because electorally, it's not. The people who are that upset about this are not going to go vote for the Republicans anyway. They were never really talking about voting for the Republicans anyway. Like, these college students are not going to turn around. The uncommitted people in Michigan are not going to turn around and vote Republicans. So
I'm not saying that. That's not what I'm saying.
So
I'm
you're
saying if the Republicans
it's
look
going to
like,
drive them back into a lesser of two evils position with the
yes, that's what
Democrats.
I'm saying. Yes,
I think they're way past that exit on the highway.
I hope so. I certainly hope so. And
because the Republicans, this is what you expect from them. This is what you expect from them. This is where the post-October 7th world has been very, very clarifying. It's really showed who people are. Because let's face it, a lot of people in our lane, because it was usually people who are on the right who really troll our mortal enemies, the liberal class, you start to like them a little bit. You start to warm up to them a little bit. Not
hey,
the
look at
ghouls
Jim
you
Jordan,
just
cute.
showed.
Yeah.
Yeah, not like Lindsey Graham. I don't think anyone was ever being like, oh, look at how Lindsey Graham owned Nancy.
No.
But certain people in that spectrum start to look appealing. And now you're really seeing who's who and what's what. We're gonna cover later in the week. There was this Oxford Union debate where actually one of the guys who organized the dissident dialogues was kind of the standout speaker against her. And while on the one hand, I didn't disagree with what he was saying about elites, it was very interesting what elites he doesn't name. He talks about pharmaceutical industry.
Oh, yeah.
He talks about Democrats. He never says AIPAC.
Right.
He never says military industrial complex. He never says that. That's the anti-woke grift. It's the same as the woke grift. It's just the flip side of that same coin. Same tactics, and what Nancy Pelosi says also in some respects was not wrong on the face of it. But in both cases, they're really misrepresenting what they represent. That's where the lie is. For Nancy Pelosi to pretend the Democrats represent working people, or for this Mumford and Sons over here, Winston something, to be pretending that they're on the side of working people because working people are really mad about COVID. So I'm going to mention pharmaceutical companies, but I'm not going to say shit about AIPAC. We're going to talk about AIPAC. You're not on their side either. Neither one of you is. It's sad. Again, I always go back to this. This is two wings of the aristocracy having a tiff. Neither one of them gives a shit about the rest of us.
Please clap.